something, so y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife.
Hide your group chat history. The UK has demanded Apple build a backdoor to its encryption services, giving the British police full key access to any Apple consumer's content stored on the cloud. And yes, that means Apple users everywhere, not just specific British users, but you, me, and any boomer with an iPhone. If they comply with the British on this, Apple won't even be permitted to warn consumers that their security and data is not secure from the British authorities. Just when you thought the British had given up their villainous ways.
Nearly.
You're watching the Consumer Manifesto, the definitive guide to consumer choice and threats around the world, and there is no greater technological threat to freedom than the demise of digital encryption. There are a lot of battles for advocates of privacy to fight in the tech space, and this hill is one worth dying on. So what is encryption when you're talking about mobile devices and cloud data? At its most basic, it's no different than when you're in school and passing a note in class, but every word is coded to mean something else so that the contents are a secret from whoever might read it. See you after class for football practice could be coded 10,000 different ways and actually mean this teacher is super weird, OMG cringe. Like with ciphers or coded messages, letters are scrambled, but with digital encryption, the code, or we call it the key, for the note passed in class changes after every single use. In the real world, that is the foundation of encrypted chat, like WhatsApp, Signal, or iMessage on an Apple device, or even HTTPS on your browser. This keeps most hackers at bay and does a good job, and it also frustrates governments to no end, and we all know why.
All too often, vital electronic evidence has been made unavailable through encryption that doesn't allow for execution of legal process.
If you live in the US, you might recall former FBI Director Christopher Wray saying that Congress should ban commercial and personal encryption to get the bad guys. There have been flare-ups for many years about encrypted devices, namely Apple iPhones, being found at the scene of crimes, and the FBI wants to access the devices for evidence collection. But the problem is that giving authorities access to one encrypted device without a warrant gives them necessary tools to access all encrypted devices of the same type. So Apple has resisted and stood by consumer privacy as a core part of their product and offerings. And say what you will about Apple, but they remain a standout champion in the mainstream tech world when it comes to consumer privacy, and that counts for something. The clash between Apple and the UK centers around cloud storage encryption that only the user, not even Apple, can access. In 2022, Apple introduced this feature under the name Advanced Data Protection, though the company had originally planned to launch it a couple of years earlier. The feature is available as an opt-in security option for Apple users in the US and other countries. Most iPhone and Mac users don't enable advanced data protection, but those who do gain stronger safeguards against hacking and unauthorized access. So be sure to do that. Here's how. What the UK government has done is issue a technical capability notice to Apple, compelling the company to provide access to encrypted data under the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016, aka the Snoopers Charter. That law gave law enforcement the authority to demand assistance from tech companies when collecting information. Rather than ask to see any specific user's device or metadata based on a judicial order from the courts, the British just want a backdoor built just for them, allowing them to unlock a device and snoop on content whenever they want.
Here's Johnny!
Most digital communication undergoes some level of encryption as it travels through privately owned networks before reaching the intended recipient. Typically, service providers like email hosts and internet companies can access the unencrypted content if law enforcement requests it. We hope with a warrant. But a growing number of platforms now use end-to-end encryption. That ensures that only the sender and the recipient have the cryptographic keys needed to read the messages. This security measure prevents intermediaries, people in the middle, from accessing the data. Popular services, Signal, WhatsApp, Meta's Messenger, and Apple's iMessage, and FaceTime implement this same encryption method. That said, due to computer power and space, end-to-end encryption is often really difficult to enforce when data is backed up on the cloud, where it may no longer be shielded from third-party access. So Apple's advanced data protection is an exception, maintaining encryption even for cloud-stored backups. This is something that WhatsApp does very well. Apple is now legally obliged to assist British authorities in accessing encrypted communications, but because of the law's secrecy provisions, the company is forbidden from publicly acknowledging the existence of such an order. I'm only talking to you about this because journalists have leaked out that information. Apple can't even release a public statement on the issue. So what's likely to happen is that Apple will reluctantly end encrypted storage in the UK altogether, meaning consumers there don't get to enjoy that feature. That's entirely in the hands of the UK government and the secretive review boards that Apple will be making appeals to behind closed doors to try and follow the law there. The big picture is that world governments will increasingly rally against encryption as they deal with threats both real and perceived. Whether that's encrypted cloud storage or even just casual use VPNs that allow consumers to sometimes circumvent localized online regulations and also conceal their browsing, but Apple is an example of a company that knows consumers expect privacy and are willing to go to the mat for those consumers. So always speak up, vote with your wallet, update your passwords periodically, encrypt your data, and be well. If you found this video helpful, throw it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm Stephen Kent, and you've been watching the Consumer Manifesto.